Guys, welcome once again to the Rajkor podcast. This episode is brought to you especially by Prem Royal Entertainment, which is a UK-based premium live entertainment brand led by Prem, a professional Dhol player with over 25 years of global performance experience. I've worked with him personally. He's offering a full Dhol team, solo Dhol performances, DJs, band bajaj, singers and Bhangra dancers, all tailored for weddings, celebrations and large-scale events. He's performed with films such as Salame Ishq. He's performed for the Queen as well, so make sure you check Prem out. If you're interested, the numbers on the YouTube video and it'll also be in the description. God bless you all. Hey guys, welcome once again to the Rajkor podcast. Let me just turn the volume just slightly lower. Welcome once again to the Rajkor podcast, and this is another special with Pete Ware, part 3. I think this is the this probably be the last part, unless Pete's got more to tell. I love chatting with Pete anyway, so it's great. Thank you so much for the response for the first 2 podcasts. It's been phenomenal. Honestly, the people reaching out, even SUKHPAL SUKH reached out, and I'm going to reconnect Pete and SUKHPAL SUKH, which is going to talk about in this podcast. Pete, how are you?
Yeah, I'm in good form, thank you very much. All good and fit now.
Amazing, because you had a bit of a cold, didn't you? And it wouldn't go.
Yeah. Apologies for that, but just this time of year, you do get a few colds and things. Messes with your ears when you're trying to work as well. So. Glad to be rid of it.
Absolutely. I've just got straight back from work, and I started. What was I doing? Yeah, I started fixing my beer machine. That's what I was doing. Yeah, random thing to do, and I realised it needed cleaning. So I was in between that, and then I thought, when you start something, oh gosh, I can't leave this here with the kids now.
Yeah.
So I was quickly rushing back up here and setting up the studio quickly as fast as I can. So that's why I was still on time, but yeah. Just thought managed.
No worries.
Yeah, you got to get your priorities right, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Anyway, so how you been since we last chatted? You've sent me loads of pictures, which I've used, and you've sent me more
I've sent
pictures.
you a few pictures. I've got more lined up for podcast 3, which is this one.
Yeah,
and maybe for podcast 4, if it depends if you give me the elbow at this point or not. We'll see how much else there is to tell.
Did you ever find the other podcast, the picture, for the one with you?
No, I've not yet laid it to the ground. That's the one at Jacobs with Jagjit and Chitra and Deepak Kazanchi. I've got a mental image of it. I just haven't been able to dig it up through the archive yet, but I swear it exists and I'll find it at some point.
I don't know whether I told you last time. I'm learning off his direct pupil, off his direct student. Yeah, so I sent him that, and he loved it. He says he can't wait to watch it, and
that's great,
because he knew him very personally. Like he was in Mumbai with him.
Mm-hmm.
He trained under him. So so all those
fantastic
stuff. Yeah. So anyway, let's recap where we were. So I'm going to let you recap, Pete.
Okay, so we'd got to the end of my time at Famous Music, and we'd started to talk about a kind of a gap where I went off and did my own thing and started to set up a bedroom sort of level studio. And before I get into that, I just wanted to do one honourable mention. I'm trying to mention as many people as I can. Obviously, there's loads of lovely people I've missed, but he's a significant one. He was Safri's keyboard player, Bhuta Jagpal, I think is his name, of B21 fame.
Someone mentioned it in the comments, didn't they?
Oh, did they? I don't know.
Yeah, but, they go. Was Bhuta Jagpal? Was he trained by yourself?
Well, not trained by me. He was adept at what he was doing already, but certainly there would have been the exchange of ideas. I'm quite sure. But he obviously went on beyond the Safri years into B21s and became amazingly successful with his brother. So I just wanted to shout out to him. And there'll be a few others that I've not mentioned along the way. I'll try and get people in where I can.
I want to know a bit more about that because he was such a prominent figure in the Bhangra industry. What was your first meeting with him, and just tell us a bit about that story before we move on?
Well, I don't know that there's a story as much as he came in, as I recall, with Safri on the first of the Safri albums as keyboard player, into programming and into recording and the whole 9 yards of it. Highly enthusiastic, easy to get on with, easy to get around. And we just worked around each other, just like you do in those studio circumstances when you sort of hot-housed together and trying to do a lot in a short space of time, open to ideas, plenty of ideas of his own. So an easy recording partner from that point of view. It does tend to be the keyboard players for some reason that are more into the tech than anybody else, possibly because the nature of playing on a keyboard is a bit more techy than the nature of plucking a guitar in a sense.
Because he used to live B21. Obviously, it's a postcode of Handsworth. That's where I was from originally as well, Handsworth. So he used to live not far from me. Him and I think maybe Queen's Head Road. I could be wrong. That was the name of the road.
I don't know, but
yeah, you all know.
He, like many others, went on and had a huge career after knowing me. But that I wouldn't say I was responsible for that in any way. But, you know, Sukhpal, for example, started to do albums on which he sang and became very well known off the back of that.
He was, yeah.
I just wanted to mention Buta because I became aware that I'd missed him out in common with lots of other people before moving on. And then we started to talk about what I was notionally thinking of as sort of a few gap years, but thinking about this podcast coming up this afternoon, it's a 5-year period, Raj. And it comes from when I set up my bedroom studio in 98, spring of 98, to 2003. And I think I mentioned on the last podcast that I eventually moved to a house in Kidderminster, and there was a building at the end, and that became the Parrot House, and that's where the name came from. But it hadn't occurred to me quite how many people came to record there. And that's my next honourable mention. I think I mentioned him briefly, Aman Hare, who's become a big player in music production as well, came in as brought his own work into the studio and did sessions for me as well. Versatile, extremely easy to like and get on with. You know, he could play anything you like. He could sing. He was understood the arrangements of things, and a real joy to be around. So I just wanted to shout out to him. And in that 5-year period, I've not really got a list here, but I think I might have mentioned PDM. I wanted to mention Desi Crew, with who I did briefly mention, and SUKHPAL, who I know to this day. In fact, he texted me a couple of days ago. I did more stuff with him later as well. But there's loads of people. There's the 2 Anarchy albums, Jamming, and what's the other one? Second Nature, of course. But there's lots of others. I'm looking at a quick list here. Dhol Blasters with Revenge, which was with the lovely Gachoran Mal, who again I met up with later because he's got a place in Spain.
Was that the first Dhol Blasters? Because there was a few of them. This was in
no, this is one in a sequence, I think.
Maybe early 90s. It would have been.
Yeah, there was stuff earlier, but this was I've got the year probably in front of me, 2002.
Okay, so that was a later edition.
Yeah. Dhol Blasters with Revenge, which was a fun album to do. And I think Safri was fairly a frequent visitor. Or another honourable shout out, and again, I mentioned it before, but what am I thinking of? I did an album and let's see if I can find him here. Oh, what's his name? It's horrible when you get old, isn't it? Because you just lose some of these names. I'll come back to him. But somebody will shout out in comments or something when they see it.
Yeah.
He was a session player, used to play Tumbi and Algozi. And
was it Devraj Jussel?
Devraj, of course. Lovely Devraj. But he sang on some stuff. We did an EP for him, as I recall. And I have a lovely long memory of him standing in the studio with Algozi. Now, I don't know whether you know, but in order to play those things, you have to do circular breathing.
Yes.
Which means you breathe in to your lungs through your nose whilst breathing out through your mouth, so you can get a constant stream of air. And he was adept at this. And he was a jolly chap, and he had quite substantial cheeks, probably as a result of blowing all his life. And he looked so cheerful that when he was doing these Algozi sessions and stuff like that, his shoulders bobbing up and down and a big grin on his face. That's a real abiding memory for me, doing sessions for all sorts of people who were there. Shinder as well, lots of people there doing stuff, and he was quite often a session on those
This is gold material for me. This is like wow, because he was very famous, like because he wrote a lot of the lyrics as
Yeah,
well.
songwriter too. Yeah,
Yeah, he was super talented. Such a
sad
talented
loss.
guy.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
yeah.
Yep. Carry on then. Who's
So,
next?
well, there's a few more. I mentioned PDM before, and anyway, so I'm not going to dwell on this period, except that around about 2000, I moved to Kidderminster, built the Parrot House, which was a bit more of a proper studio, a bit bona fide studio, and did a lot of sessions in that time. I was working really hard.
So was it at the back of your house? You said like a
It was at the
building.
back of a house in an L-shaped brick building, which was a former Parrot House,
Yeah.
hence the name.
Could you describe what was it like? Like, did you have to treat it and all that and
Yeah, I did treat it. I triple glazed it. I had an air connel that was very noisy. If you imagine an L, the middle bit of the L was the music space. The control room was one arm of the L, and there was a chill out and tea making in the other arm. So that was, apart from being a bit hot, it was a really good place to work.
sounds
And
amazing.
I kind of pioneered a change, maybe not pioneered in the sense of the whole industry, but I made a change then. Up until that point, all studios were focused around a big control desk, faders as wide as your arms could stretch.
Yeah, yeah.
And then you'd have controllers for tape machines, which could be somewhere else in the room. And then you'd have a load of outboard processing gear and a bunch of keyboards normally and speakers up in front of you.
Mm-hmm.
When I built the Parrot House, I could see the future because we were now recording on computers. I went to computer recording in '98, meaning that you record your audio straight into a computer and then you processed it rather than recording onto tape and then processing it. And it occurred to me early on that the computer was suddenly becoming the most important element of the studio. So normally only one monitor back then. You'd have your monitor in the middle with your keyboard. So I pushed the mixing desk off to my left. So I had a sort of a triangular shape with keyboards to the left and processing gear underneath, speakers up in front, computer and monitor in the middle, and keyboards off to the right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a right-handed keyboard player, so I could sit in that sort of like a spider in a web. And I've got the mixing desk on my left hand, the computer in the middle, and the keyboards on the right, and then room for people to sit behind, and the booth through a pair of double glass doors off to my left. So it was like putting on a suit almost. It was really ergonomic, and I changed to that system in 2000, and I retain that same kind of principle now. This studio I'm sitting in, 3 monitors in front, speakers, mixing desk in a corner, and then keyboards behind me. But it's essentially the same principle. You sit in one position and you can access everything, a bit like the system you've got there.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that sounds amazing. To be fair, like I would have loved to experience that in its heyday.
Well, I don't have a picture of the Parrot House to hand. I couldn't find one, but I probably got pictures of the Parrot House once I moved abroad, which was essentially the same format.
Yeah.
And in fact, the Puzzle House, which was subsequently the same format again. It just became natural. We needed less and less to have control over a mixing desk. I don't use a mixing desk to any great degree nowadays. So it got pushed to the side and made more space for your feet. And
for the audience, like I know why you probably don't use that. I can guess, but like because some of the audience are not technically musical. Could you explain why you wouldn't use the music desk and
right
for the audience? Yeah.
Well, I do still use a mixing desk, but only a small mixing desk,
Yep.
and that's for getting signals from microphones into the computer and a bit of processing and controlling the level of the speakers and other input sounds. But the output side, which is what that huge desk is for, has moved inside the computer.
Yep.
And it can be as big as you like. So if you want one with 120 channels, you can have one. Whereas, of course, that would be 15 feet long or something like that. So the mixing desk as a separate element got absorbed into the computer systems. And it's been like that for the last 20 odd
So would you say that's the switch between analog and digital?
Well, yeah, going to a record on computer was already digital. In fact, digital recording started much earlier than that. We mentioned in the first podcast that Jagjit and Chitra was recorded digitally.
Yeah,
That was still onto tape, but that was a digital recording.
yeah.
And then there were various digital formats came out. There's a cartridge format came out where you had 3 cartridges and 24 tracks. It's slow to operate, but very, very good quality. And then you had hard disk recordings briefly. Akai was a big brand name in that, Tascam, those sort of people. And then the whole of that got put inside the computers at the late 90s and into the noughties. And so all of that's inside a box, or nowadays in a laptop.
Out of interest, which DAW do you use now?
I'm a Cubase man.
Cubase.
I'm into Cubase because I took to Cubase when it was Pro 24 in 1986 or 7 or 8, but 1988, I think. And I just stayed with it. There were others, Creator and stuff, which I think became Logic and a few others. But I just stuck with Cubase, and I've been with them all the way through, because once you build a knowledge up from the ground, provided you put in the legwork to keep up to date with all the new things that come out on a new version, then it's probably easiest just to stay put. And of course, provided it does everything you want it to do.
Pete, I love talking to you, as you can probably tell.
I appreciate that.
No, because I just love getting the knowledge and your outlook, because of your experience. You've got such a wealth of experience, and for me, this is part of the podcast. Is I know we're talking about your journey as well, but I'm like a sponge. I'm just taking in what you're saying, and
I appreciate it.
And I really appreciate it. Like I know some of this is. Some of the audience thinking, why is he talking about mixing desks? And
well, it does hark back to where we started, where I was at school and I had music in one half of my brain and technology and physics in the other half. So I've always had a keen interest in how's it work, and it becomes really quite key in this next section, really, because I'll take you from 2000, when Parrot House started up in Kidderminster. And of course, Kidderminster's quite close to get to from Birmingham, so it was good for people to come down, quite easy. And my wife and my children and I lived there from 2000 to July 2003, and that was probably the most intense work period of my life so far. Bear in mind, I'd got parallel music businesses going on beyond the Bhangra industry too.
Did you still have the Irish music going on at the same time?
Yeah, absolutely. I was doing Charlie Lansbury albums and dance albums for various people, some of them back from the early 80s and some more up-to-date ones, and remixes and all sorts of stuff. So I was working really, really intensely. I was down in that studio all the time. And it was for a purpose, because we came to the conclusion in 2002 that we wanted to have a complete break in an adventure, and that we were planning to emigrate. And we decided our decision was to go, well, initially to Mallorca. That was where we were having to go. And then just about that time, those 2 planes were rammed into the Twin Towers in New York. That awful, awful situation. And when that happened, we were in Mallorca looking for property. So at that point, seeing those images, we started to think, hang on, this is an island 25 kilometers by 40 or something like that, very small island. What would happen if we went into some really worse situation with young children? We'd be really stuck. So the appeal of Mallorca kind of got a bit tarnished. And we came back, we decided that we still wanted to move, but we would go to the Spanish mainland, because at least then you'd have a chance to drive away from a trouble spot or something like that. Bear in mind, our kids were very little at the time. We were very protective of them. And that partly led our decision. And the rest of it was sheer sense of adventure. We wanted to go and do something completely out of our comfort zone. So we were planning from 2002, early in 2002 onwards, to eventually make a leap, lock, stock and barrel, to Spain. And eventually we moved in July of 2003. But now there's another tie-up, which I'm trying to tie all these. You said right at the beginning I could go off into corners.
That's fine. Do it.
I mentioned SUKHPAL SUKH and how brilliant he was with our kids when my wife was ill, just in the period before going to Spain. And he'd been up several times. I think he came up originally, and I think a bit earlier, the name Indigit Atwell, who was a Gravesend singer, comes to mind as one of his early jobs. And Sukhpal, again, good keyboard player, good understanding of Western music, versatile, motivated, very familiar with the Indian market and also the Canadian market. And he started to become a more regular character. He was bringing in work and coming over to England to work with me. And this, we didn't know how this was going to work, but when we eventually made the leap into Spain, he became really significant. We moved to Spain, we piled everything into boxes, packed the studio away, and we decided that we would get it over to Spain, and we moved into a rental house for a bit, whilst the house we bought, which was a little farmhouse, was being rebuilt and done up for us. So I was taking a much needed complete break from music. The studio was all in a unit down in Malaga. We were trying to find out what life was like in Spain, living in the heat and the different social place and all of that. And so through the end of the summer, July on to September, October of that year, I was doing nothing. I was ill for a bit, I recall, but not badly, but just sort of, I think, probably withdrawal from the stress of, multiple mortgage payments and all of this stuff going on. And I'd been working really intensely for years at that point. At this point, I'd be 46 or 47, something in that order. So I stopped. Everything stopped. We had lots of people phoning us up to say hello, but essentially the whole thing stopped. And then I got a call from Sukhpal around about September, I think. And he said, Pete G, she always used to call me, or big brother G. He said, how soon could you get a studio together? He said, I'm pretty desperate. I've got projects to do. I've got people with money in their hands desperate to do these projects. And they want you and I to do these projects. Can you do anything? And I said, well, Sukh, mate, I'm not even in the house yet. I'm spending my days wiring the house and painting and stuff. He said, well, is there anything you could do? So I had to think about it and thought, we do have a shed, a brick built shed down in the garden, very, very small, about the size of a typical UK kitchen, but very two tiny rooms linked together, maybe two spaces, 10-foot square each, something like that, 3 meters square. I said, well, I wonder, Sukhpal, it just might be possible, but man, I know you're used to it living, in India and stuff, but I'm not used to that kind of heat. I don't think I could do it without some aircon and stuff. So he said, well, get back to me. So I looked a bit further and I thought, well, I can get the stuff out of the storage unit. I can have somebody put some aircon in and we'll give it a try. So I phoned Sukh up and said, yeah, book the flights. I'll get the studio in and wired. I did all my own studio wiring and stuff. And also, another little side turn, back in 2000, I started to teach myself to build studio computers as well, PCs, because once I knew that I was going to be doing this full time, doing it intensely, and then moving to Spain, I knew I'd have to be able to troubleshoot my own gear. So I installed the studio, and Sukhpal in the autumn of October, I think it was, of 2003, came over. And I think we did 4 albums in 3 weeks, if you can imagine that, something like that. Super intensive.
So did he already have the vocals and stuff?
We had the vocals, yeah, a bit more than that. Sukhpal had recorded the vocals. He'd recorded some instrumental pieces. Very well organised guy, as I say. And he needed to bring them in, assemble it all, sweeten everything, play keyboards and drums and basses and all that sort of thing on all these tracks. Now, the space was very small. One space had washing machines and what have you in it. And I think I put the music computer down in a corner there, and we had loads of cables coming and going because back at that time you still needed a desk and all of that. And we sat in the other space, which would be, as I say, 3 meters or 10-foot square. At times we were back to back, sitting on a pair of back-to-back chairs with computer on one side, keyboards on the other, because SUKHPAL was contributing keyboard parts, and then the speakers up somewhere, a few bits of outboard, and we did a bunch of albums. I can't remember all of the artists, but I remember one of the artists was Book and Jat.
Yeah.
And blow me, didn't those albums go well? So they largely became. You need to do a podcast with SUKHPAL. Clearly, he will tell you in more accuracy and more.
I did ask him actually. I did ask him. Yeah, he says he'll be up for it.
Yeah. He will be able to tell you names and places because he's got an absolutely encyclopedic knowledge of stuff. Even to this day, I'm quite sure if I said, "Do you remember that song by so and so?" Oh yes, he'd say it would be tempo 92,
Wow.
D sharp minor. I think it was a major rag. Yeah, I remember that. He said, "Yeah, I could find music pieces for that," and he would have that kind of amazing recall of everything we'd done in the past. So those albums finished. SUKHPAL went off. I was a bit enriched and happy to have done it. And then we moved into the big house, and I eventually installed the studio there. And then from then on, lots of people came, but SUKHPAL became an absolute regular. Funny, to the extent that some of the Indian people who were his clients were beginning to think he wasn't actually coming. But I swear he came over many, many times and became a very regular visit to us over in Spain.
So he'd fly from India, Canada, straight to you?
Normally India, I think, yeah. He'd fly in to Heathrow and then fly down to Spain, spend 3 weeks with us, 4 weeks, 2 weeks, whatever he had work for. But we knew that in order to make it viable, because although there's a profit in it, it was, with flying expenses and phoning home and everything else, and paying for two people's work as well, that we would have to make really good use of the money that came in. So we would work super intensely and really give it our all. Got used to working fast and efficiently, but trying to maintain standards, and improve standards. Yeah, hard times, but good times.
Well, that sounds amazing. It just sounds like you've just the work's gone in and the hustle behind it. It's quite fascinating, that the story you're telling me. So I can't wait to have SUKHPAL on one day.
So think of it this way. I think of the mid 80s to the end of the 80s as the first golden era from my perspective.
Yeah.
And then the period from Achanak and Safri and so on through to the end of 97 as being the second golden period. The 5 years beyond that, a bit of a sort of a lost thing, but actually, when I look back at it now, really quite fruitful too, because most of the albums that I had a hand in were well received. And then, without me knowing, going to Spain, thinking that I might be cutting ties with all of this, to have what I considered to be the third golden age, because I had working for lots of people on the Bhangra side, but SUKHPAL became very much like a brother. We worked endlessly to try and make things good. Do you remember I said in the first podcast, always try and start from a different starting place every time? So we weren't copying other people's records. We might occasionally reference somebody else, but for the most part, we were going, right, new song, new artist, new day, where do we start? And so you might start with something that you'd heard on the radio. And because we're in Spain, you'll notice that there are some Spanish influenced records. Spain was into a kind of a beat which is called reggaeton.
Yeah, no, reggaeton, yeah.
You know the reggaeton style, and I figured that reggaeton and Indian percussion was a perfect fit because it had the same tripping beat, like the dotted beat to it, that is ideal for a dolok or a dhol.
Would you say you pioneered that sound?
Well, I think I can't imagine that it happened much before.
Wow.
So, and I was really into a particular single by, I think they're called Yankee Daddy. It was a Spanish hit called Me Gusta la Gasolina, which means I love petrol. Okay. And it had this fantastic reggae beat to it. And it was listening to that in the fairgrounds in Spain, hammering out the speakers there. And I'm hearing this groove. and going, well, hang on a minute, it's great for a slow Dhol, you know. So I started to use reggaeton beats and Dhol together. Whether it was me pioneering, I don't know. I wasn't really listening, Raj, to other people. We were just doing our own thing. But so I certainly used reggaeton beats and Dhol beats together, and they're a perfect match.
What did Sukhpal bring that was different to, because the tide started changing at that point, in that area you're talking from the UK to India to Canada. What did he bring different, which sort of changed that?
I tell you what was key. I'm kind of thinking this as I'm saying it. I think there were several key points, and again, he could elaborate. One important thing was that UK had started to go down a DJ route, and that's fine. And there were some good DJ artists about as well. The Senator springs to mind,
yeah,
who I worked with a couple of times. But it was going down, and then into jungle and drum and bass, and it was down. It was down with that kind of thing, and then hip hop out the back of that. I wasn't massively into that. Sukhpal wasn't massively into that, but the UK was into that. But Sukhpal's main market wasn't the UK; it was India.
Yes,
and so he gave me a doorway into Indian retailing of records with various record companies over there. Fine Tone rings a bell, but there were plenty. I think we did stuff for T-Series and all sorts of record companies out there. And so he provided me with a more or less endless supply of work in a style that I could cope with and a market that was eager for it. Whereas the UK Bhangra had taken another turning at that point. Mm-hmm. So it was, again, just like the whole Deepak Kazanchi meeting and the whole meeting with Sukshinder Shinder, for example, in the 90s, it was just another chemistry that we formed, and it lasted, 8-9 years, something like that, a long time. And we've obviously been great mates through that and to this day. So,
can you remember any significant albums like that he did?
And a few artists and a few albums. You've got to remember, Raj, when the albums came to me, I would be given a working title, and it might be, let me turn over a page, I'll give you a couple of, and there might just be a single name. And if you look at this list, you can see the writing on the right is albums that I did with Sukh. And this particular page, you can see it's massively full of Sukhpal albums. There's probably 20 there alone.
Wow.
And this is from 2003 to 2008, this page. And it's not complete. It's done in the, years later I wrote this down. I can give you a few names. Sunny Baba, Balkar Sidhu, Onka Chima, Babu Gill, Gary Hottie, Happy Gotra, Deepak Dhillon, Amrita Virk, Major S. I don't know who he was. Deepak Dhillon. Sarabjit Chima, 2 albums with him. He came over to Spain to record vocals as well. Balbir Boparai, very famous wedding hit came from him. I think was that called
Didigida?
Yes, that's right.
That one,
yeah. And Sarabjit Chima with Ri Rara, for example. Balbir Boparai, Sarabjit, Sukhdev, I don't know all of these people because I only had the working names at times.
Wow, some of the names are really familiar to me. Like they're really, really big artists.
Yeah, lots of big artists. He was doing good stuff for good people, and you know what happens when you do good stuff for good people? You attract success to you because everybody wants a bit of that success, and that means that then the next year you have more success because now you've got people like Sarabjit Chima who had a couple of successful albums with us doing well. And so other people go, oh, I fancy a bit of that. So who's made that? Well, it's Sukhpal and this geezer in Spain,
So here's a question for you, Pete. So this is, you had people like Sarabjit Chima come to your studio.
You did.
I just want you to think about, like, in terms of vocally, you had before you had the British British singers, and then you had someone who's direct from India,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a different style. What did
Yeah,
you
yeah.
make of that, and what was the experience like? Because it's a different, two different styles of
Yeah,
singing.
it's a different style, but I had Sukhpal there in the middle, remember?
Okay.
So Sukhpal was very Western music aware,
Yeah.
and he would, for recreation, listen to all sorts of stuff and bring all sorts of influences in. But of course, he would be able to direct people in Hindi or Punjabi
Yeah.
really comfortably. So as a consequence of that, it never became a problem. You know,
Wow.
most of the people who came in had some English, albeit maybe a little bit iffy. And bear in mind, by then I knew a lot of musical terms, and even if I couldn't have a full conversation with Sukhpal to translate and the understanding of words from the songs, I thought I'd turn that down. Sorry. Let me just
Okay, nice. I can't hear it. Because, like, I was just thinking, like, see that British style of singing, British UK Bhangra style of singing, it's it's more or less died out. Whereas
right.
that singing that you're referring to like now, like Salabis Jimma and these folky, very folky
Yeah,
voices
yeah.
are really still in now.
Yeah, well, as I say, it came as a result of Sukhpal's influence. People
Wow.
living in India and selling the music in India were interested in what Sukhpal and I were doing, and of course they sang in that style anyway, and
Yeah.
that tended to keep me known in a more deshy area than I would have been had I stayed in England. I think
Mm.
I'd have made more hand up in the air. I would have made more of an effort to go with the DJ thing. But I didn't, as it happened, because I'd moved to Spain and was out of that influence.
That's
So you could
fascinating,
see
Pete. That's
Sukhpal was
fascinating.
very influential on me, you know.
Wow, that's fast because I never knew this part of your like. I was familiar with your work, but I didn't realize that the close connection you had with this part of of your musical journey.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that you were so closely tied to these massive hits.
Yeah, in India and Canada and around the world.
Exactly,
Yeah.
yeah. That's really fascinating for me, and
Yeah.
it's probably shows my ignorance in that sense that I didn't realize that you were
Well, this is why we're doing the third podcast, isn't
yeah.
it? I don't know how many projects I've done with Sukhpal. It's got to be north of 50 albums, I would think, that
Wow.
in that kind of order over a sort of a 10-year period or a bit more perhaps. Huge, because we did some stuff when I came back to England as well. But
I can't believe really you've defined Punjabi music eras basically. Oh
I
gosh.
didn't know what I was doing, mate. I just didn't know. I was just
Maybe
doing
not,
what
but
I do, you know.
you've literally defined three or four eras of Punjabi
Yeah.
music.
Well,
It's
it's
crazy.
those golden eras,
Yeah.
and I say you don't know you're in it until you come out of it the other end of it.
Wow.
So it was
Carry on.
massive
Sorry,
for me.
I keep interrupting you. Carry on
No,
because I'm,
no,
I'm
no,
intrigued.
no, no, no. Interrupt away. I I I realised it probably 2004 or five that I managed to hit another seam or find another golden era as well, and I was very reliant on Sukhpal for that, and very grateful for it too, still to this day.
Gosh. Wow.
So now, yeah, that was quite a thing. Um, Other mentions, SUKHPAL came over to Spain. We actually recorded a video documentary of one visit. I've got it somewhere. We never released it. Um, Suki Kayla from Sahara came over and
Yeah, yeah,
recorded. He had an artist called DV8, I think,
yeah, yeah. I remember DV8. Yeah, yeah.
and a number of other people. And I had a few other people come over from India too. A chap
You remember
called
the names or
Ruby, somebody. Can't remember his name off the top of my head.
what was the name?
Maybe
Sorry,
Ruby, somebody. I'd have to look it up. I don't have
yeah,
it to hand, but uh, all sorts of people. And bear in mind, I also had, you know, my long-standing production music friend Charlie Lansborough, still coming and going. In fact, he bought a place in Spain and was a regular visitor. I'd known him from the mid-90s.
do you want to talk about that scene while you were there as well?
Okay.
How that evolved? Because
Yeah.
it's not just about the banger industry; it's about your journey as a musician as well. So if you could fill us in what was happening there.
Okay, so I've already talked about Charlie a bit. He's a very gentle folk singer with very long hair. Lovely, gentle character, absolutely fantastic stage presence, the real magnetism about him. And I've been making albums initially at Famous Music for and with Terry Bradford in the 90s. And I played in his band as keyboard player and laterally music director till 2000. And then that was a situation that finished. Not we hadn't argued or anything, but it came to an end fairly abruptly. And that was in the middle of me setting up this studio at Parrot House and stuff. But then in 2002, I reconnected with Charlie, and then I started what became a massively long sequence of albums with him, which carried on for guts of 16 years or something like in that kind of order. Yeah, 15 years of albums of all kinds. Recorded initially at the Parrot House in Kidderminster and latterly in Spain for a decade, and then back in England again after that. But that's a bit further on in the story. So I'd, off the back of him, become aware of the Irish music scene. And so I had other albums going on for other Irish-based or sometimes Nashville or country-based artists as well. So that became a whole different string, different music process altogether.
Did that music evolve as well? You know how you evolved the Bhangra scene. Was that music evolving as well? Was it?
I guess it was, but I didn't feel like it was much of a driver of it. I certainly evolved Charlie's sound from where it started.
Yeah.
And he continued to be, he sort of re-became successful and continued to be successful to the end of his career. Bless him, he's still doing well and glorious and retired now. But he had a brilliant music career. He started at 54.
Really? Wow.
He was a school teacher before that. So his first hit was he would be 54, and he carried on until his late 70s, playing and touring all over the place. So I was instrumental to his success and hopefully to some other people along those lines, but he wasn't, we weren't trying to cut new ground in quite the same way. He had his own way of sounding and I adhered to what I thought of. I suppose this is a bigger thing than that, but what I tend to do when I've got steady artists like that, I kind of evolve a palette of sounds. And I imagine them, I call it in this case Charlie World, which is a silly mental construction, but it would be, would a particular approach to production fit in with Charlie World or would it not? Would it feel odd? And there'd always be extras that you'd put in, but Charlie World had a distinct sound all of its own. And when I was working with other artists, I'd form a sound palette and I would use it for them alone. And each artist had their own sound palette. And I realized looking back that I did that to some extent with the Bhangra side as well. Certain things that would be appropriate to certain bands defined by some of the sounds that you choose. So Charlie was going on in the background. The whole Irish scene was going on in the background. But there's another but.
Go on.
There's a third leg to all of this, and that is, and I've got to go back to 1983 for this. I recorded for a lovely lady called Hazel Dean, who was one of the early Stock Aitken Waterman artists. And in 1983, she recorded a single with somebody else, and it became an early hit. And then she did records with Stock Aitken Waterman for quite. She did an album, Heart First, I think it was called. She back in the day, when you went on television, you had to have people to play with you live. It was against the musician's rules not to have live performances. But that situation was changing. So since the music that she was playing was programmed by a synth player, they hired a synth player to go to the BBC or ITV or wherever it was to remake the music specifically for a show. I did it for a particular track of hers many times. she had a biggish hit with a song called Searching, 1984, 1985, somewhere around there. And I was at that point a synth programmer, so I would be hired to go in and program the track for whatever it was. It might have been Saturday Superstore, which was like the kids program on a Saturday morning, or it might be, it might have been Crackerjack, or programs of the era. And I got known as somebody who could do this, so I did this. I went to Top of the Pops with Hazel on one occasion and met some fairly famous people there. Now, so it's a bit of a sideline. We'll come back to that if we have time.
Yeah.
And so I got to know Hazel quite well. So later on, once Hazel had passed through her period with Stock Aitken and Waterman, we'd kept in touch. And I was still very much in that area of the music business, which was club music, dance music, and high energy at the time. And Hazel was a high energy artist. This is thumping 4/4 beats at high tempo, essentially. So Hazel and I started to work together doing songwriting demos and productions, even whilst I was at Arishma. And she then carried on with me all the way through the famous music period in the 90s. And eventually to the Parrot House in Kidderminster, and continued to be a friend come client into us going to Spain. There was a bit of a pause there, but eventually she came to Spain and introduced me to her record label, which is a company called Energize. And we were making music from, I think, about 2009 albums for Energize. And they became friends of mine. And meanwhile, this is yet another thread. I'm sorry if I'm going off in all directions.
No. Please do.
I'd become really annoyed with making music and making albums and making records, and then they had to go off and be mastered. Mastering was a whole separate discipline, and you went to a hopefully well set up studio, normally in central London, but few in other places. And then you'd have a mastering engineer listen over to your music, make some changes, do whatever they had to do, and prepare it so it could go on CDs and on records. And I'd been doing this for many years. But before I even went to Spain, I was getting really peeved because the cost of this was like £1,000 a time.
Wow.
Huge money. And the technology they were using was good quality, but behind the times. And it just, I wasn't really very happy with the results. So in 2002, I think it was the last time I did a Charlie Lansbury album and mastered it in a mastering room. And I said to the record company, can I master these albums myself? And they said, well, if you think you can do the job, yes, absolutely. So I mastered Charlie's albums from then on. I actually mastered Mundial de Pache, for example. I was mastering from earlier. Yeah, I mastered that album when I was at Famous Music still. I'd been mastering for a few years.
Punjabi MC's
album. It was a single, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So I'd been mastering for quite a while. So I started to master albums as well, which was another income source for me, because I'd realized that the mastering thing had become top heavy and I could master for a fraction of the price, and I was getting better results, in my opinion, and in many other people's opinion too. So I started to do mastering. So it became natural that that connection to Energize Records with Hazel became a situation where I did some mastering for them as well.
Wow.
And then I started to do remixes for them as well, for other artists. So the Hazel connection blossomed from there. And we did several more albums for Energize. And I became close to Energize. And because their style of music was very much the music of the pop music of the 80s, kind of revisited in a sort of a boutique record company way, then suddenly, because we're now talking, 15, 20 years on, they wanted people who had made music in the mid-80s that had a certain sound to it. And so I started to be used and requested by Energize to make albums for other artists. So I leapt on to this third leg. So now I've got the Bhangra going on with Sukhpal. I've got The Irish stuff going on with a number of people, but led by at that point mainly Charlie Lansborough. And now I've got a third leg, which is high energy dance music.
Wow.
Now, obviously, the Irish and the Bhangra thing didn't connect very much, but I did put some fairly banging beats into some of the Bhangra over the years too, because it just seemed appropriate to do so, and a little bit of cross feeding the other way too. So, in conclusion to this section, for the last 15 years or so, I've had this triumvirate, three-pronged areas of the music business all running simultaneously, and none of them really very integrated with the other, and then mastering as a sort of a hidden thing going on in the background. So wow. A bit does mess with your head.
That's amazing. Like I'm so happy I'm talking to you, like, because this I think these aspects of your musical career I don't think many people know.
So, no, well, different people don't know about the Bhangra as well.
Exactly.
So which is great, you know.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
You remember something else I said at the beginning of the first podcast, that I've never seen a divide between the construction and something being the physics, and the form of something being the arts, the physics and the you know, sciences and the arts. And I don't really see any distinction between Bhangra or Irish music or dance music. They're all there to invoke a human reaction, whether it be telling a story about the Punjab, you know, Hira Ranja or whatever it is, or to evoke people to dance or cry with the sentimentality that the Irish are famous for, or whether it be just somebody bouncing off the walls in a club. You know, it's all the same process. You're trying to make contact with people over time and over distance. So it's essentially telepathy. At the end of the day, the whole construct of the music business is telepathy. It's getting an idea across from A to B. And all of the technology and all of the styles are just sidelines to all of that.
Wow.
I think that's my philosophy anyway.
Well,
stunned into silence.
Well, yeah, that's twice now. The first podcast, and now I'm just thinking, wow. Like it's gosh, you really got me this time. So I just want you to cover. So was that period of time? Have you covered that, or was there more?
Pretty much. That all ran really well until 2011 or something like that, and then Sukhpal and I started. We didn't ever go off the boil, but the work wasn't there in quite the same amount. He was doing other things. I was doing other things. There'd been a massive recession in the whole of Europe, but Spain was particularly hard hit. 2008-9, there was a massive financial recession going on, and so things naturally started to slow down. And that, it wasn't failing exactly, and I have to say I was doing better than average. Excuse me, but things were slowing down, and that was okay. I was quite comfortable in Spain at that point, but then, I suppose, to bring this whole section to conclusion, just to explain that as we got into 2013, my mum became ill, and I started to spend quite a lot of time in the UK, and she died in 2013 in the autumn.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad, who was also physically quite infirm by then, my mum died quite quickly, a few weeks. But my dad was left in a position of he would have to leave the family house, which is in Essex, and go into a home unless we could somehow stump up the solution. And I was in a really difficult situation because I was trying to work and maintain living in Spain. I'd got a growing family of teenage children and my wife in Spain, slightly receding income, and then a desperately complicated and difficult family situation. So I eventually made the really difficult decision that I would come over to England and spend 2 weeks of every month in England looking after my dad, doing turnaround with my sister. And we would take it in turns to help him stay in the family house. And so from the beginning of the end of 2013 and into 2014, that's what I did. And at that point, I essentially kicked most of the music business into touch. I didn't have time for it. I did a little bit, but just to keep sane, or as much as I could under the circumstances. And so I travelled fortnightly between Malaga area and Essex to look after my dad. And so the music business came to the end. I spent as much time with my family as I could, and didn't quite actually come to the end because I built a little tiny gash studio in a bedroom at my dad's in order to have something to leap off onto to keep sanity and to keep in touch with people. But essentially everything stopped, and that was end of 2013.
Wow. And this brings you to, and what about after that period?
I did a little bit with SUKHPAL and a little bit with other people, and some sort of general Western pop. And I was still doing some energized things with Hazel still. But the machinery, the industry side stopped. And it was a risk I had to take. I didn't think I had a choice.
Yeah. And to me, Pete, you did the right thing. That was the only option really you had.
Well, my thought pattern was that I wanted to do everything I could for my dad.
Of course,
I didn't want, beyond all that, I didn't want to live looking back in regret that I could have done more.
Absolutely, and you did the right thing. I would have done the same.
Yeah, so this comes to the end of a golden period because the brakes had to go on it. And you know, I was probably pretty worn and tired by then. What were we talking? 2013. So it's a long period to be working. So I don't know, where are we for time, Raj? We must be coming up on an hour, I think.
Yeah, 5 minutes left for an hour.
Well, I think we should wrap it there, and maybe we do a mini podcast 4. Do you think? Because that's only 2013. We're now in 2026. That's 13 years I've got left to cover, and I haven't been sitting back all that time. I can promise you.
Yeah, and yeah, that's a good idea, and also like, I think what I might put out there, I might just ask the audience if they've got any questions for you.
You can do, yeah. I might not want to reply, but certainly, absolutely.
For part 4, like, you can tell the rest of your story and just...
Yeah, I'll do a Q&A for part 4.
Yeah, I might just
make it a short one, perhaps.
Yeah, just any questions, and say, guys, if you've got any questions for the last episode. It won't be in this one because this one will be released probably in about a month's time.
Yeah.
I'll put a separate social media. Well, I tell you what, if you can... we'll talk off air after.
Well, I'll tell you on air what I want to do this for is there are a lot of Bhangra people that I want to give a deserved mention to in the period when things started to move again until the present day. So it would be nice to save those people. I want them to feel special too.
Absolutely.
Maybe, you know, as you say, 25 minutes of me chatting about that period, and then a Q&A to wrap things up. That would be nice.
I think it's great, and I'll it's been a privilege for me. It's been so good to know you, to get to know you and get to know other sides of your music as well, which is I find fascinating that you've managed to juggle all these different music industries.
Not without mishap sometimes.
Yeah.
And not without a certain amount of mental stress.
Yeah, and I know that each industry, there's people who have helped you along the way, so it's not just a solo thing, but you were sort of foundational to these periods, for these periods. So yeah, absolutely amazing. So guys, Pete, we'll me hitting the mic. we'll meet again for part 4. We'll arrange it, and we'll so guys, look out for part 4. Get me done twisted. Look out for part 4, the last and final part. And
well, let me say one more thing, Raj. I just wanted to thank you for the opportunity, for letting me chat, and we've been completely, disorganized in a way. It's been a pleasure for me.
Pete, I feel that I've made a friend along the way. That I genuinely feel that, and every time I finish this podcast, I go to my wife and I says, well, it was so awesome, and I'm so inspired. I'm so invigorated just by talking to you.
Well, just think of all of the hundreds of friends, Bhangra area alone, let aside the bigger picture, the hundreds of people I would call my friends from all of those periods.
Absolutely.
I hope that nobody would think badly of me, and I don't really think badly of anybody either. I want to see the good in people. That's a bigger philosophy, if you like. But I think of my clients as clients initially and friends thereafter. And I have dear friends from all kind of periods in the music business, Bhangra business, Irish business, and in the high energy side as well. And of course, in bigger than that in walks of life. But hundreds of friends directly through my interaction with people in music. Been great.
That's amazing. And I think that will end part 3. So guys, that was Peter Ware, part 3. Make sure you share, you like, and leave feedback, because all the feedback that you guys gave me, I passed on to Peter. And I'll do that again for you for each episode. So thank you so much, and we'll meet again for part 4. Make sure you, as I said, drop a review. All these things help the podcast. All these things help the algorithm go forward. So make sure you do that. And God bless you all.
And lots of thanks to everybody from my side too.
Thank you.